Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
What is going on, y'all? I hope you can hear me. We made some changes, and I guess we'll find out here in a second. But welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing, where faith in God is the standard and masculinity is not up for negotiation. Today is Tuesday, March 31st. March 31st. Wow. This time has gone by way too fast, but we got a lot to get into. And I don't know if we're not going to get into everything that I wanted to talk about. When I look at the list of topics, it's probably twice as long as it usually is. And so we're not going to get into everything, but so much has happened since the last time we were together. But we are going to get into this DHS funding fight, the No Kings, the No Kings protests, leftist violence, and a whole lot more if we have time. But the pattern that has emerged is quite visible. They're no longer trying to hide it. I don't know if they ever really were, but now we can all see it. Same pressure worldwide. Government, culture, and even churches, which is sad, especially from my perspective and from anyone who's a Christian. From their perspective, it's got to be sad to see. But one thing keeps getting pushed, and that is not ignored or anything, but targeted. And the question isn't if or even why, because we know why. We all know why. Even people who aren't Christians, who don't really pay attention, probably on some level know why. So the question is, what are we gonna do about it? So let's get after it. But before we do me a favor and hit the like button, subscribe to the show, subscribe to the channel, help us get out of this algorithm morass that we're bogged down in right now. We're growing. We hit 1,300 subscribers last night, so thank you all for that very much. But we're growing, but it's slowed down a little bit. So every like and share and subscription helps. And we also have memberships. So if you want to support the channel, you can join. Just hit the join button that's right underneath this video or any video that you're watching. So we would love to have you join us, and now we're going to get after it. They say that this is a funding fight. It's not. It's not even a little bit of a funding fight. That's the frame that they're using, but that's not what it is. DHS isn't being debated. It's being leveraged. And as a result, your safety, your security, the safety and security of this country is being leveraged. And we all know, we've heard them say it before, that it's the only leverage that they have. And they're going to use it. This is about who controls government, who controls enforcement. There's immigration law on paper that we've heard people quote time and time again. And then there's immigration law in practice. It's a fight over whether law enforcement, or it's a fight over whether the law actually gets enforced. And we all know how much the left hates, absolutely hates, enforcing laws. And we see the results and the carnage from their refusal to enforce laws. We see it every day. And it's sad. But what's actually happening is that House Republicans have, led by Steve Scalise, have pushed back on the Senate and that ridiculous bill that they passed in the dead of night, because the funding that they are refusing for certain aspects of DHS, it's tied directly to enforcement priorities. And John Thune, the guy who we all know should never have been elected as the Senate Majority Leader because he is an anti-Trump senator, and he got with another anti-Trump senator and Schumer, and they crafted this bill thinking most likely that the House would just go ahead and pass it and not read it. We know how they don't like reading the things that they vote on and pass. But to their credit, and from what I understand from, well, I can't remember who it was, but I heard one of them say that it was only 10 pages. The one that I read, I thought it was more like 13 or 14, but regardless, that may have been a different version now that I think about it. But regardless, it wasn't very long. It wasn't like a 1,500 page monstrosity that they're used to putting through. And so they read it and they said, no, we're not gonna do this. Democrats simply do not want immigration law enforced. And there's a reason for that. They don't want it enforced because they know that the more people that come into this country, the more seats they're going to have, the more votes they're going to have. And that's why they're fighting tooth and nail to keep DHS, ICE from enforcing the laws and kicking them out. And that's sad. Now, Steve Scalise, he is leading this fight in the House, and he was making the rounds over the weekend. And Tim Burchett, he had an interesting one as well that we might get to. But Steve Scalise had this to say, and then we're going to get into a little bit more of that as well.
The shutdown, the Department of Homeland Security shutdown, the Senate passed a measure to fund Department of Homeland Security, except for new funding for ICE and CBP. It was unanimous. There wasn't a single Republican who objected, and it didn't get a vote in the House. Why not? Why would the House not even give that a vote?
Well, we actually read their bill, and frankly, a number of senators have expressed buyer's remorse with what they did at 3 in the morning. So we looked at it. One of the things that we had real concerns with is it actually defunds over 25% of the baseline operations of the Department of Homeland Security. 25% at a time when we're at a heightened threat level. And so we've passed now 4 bills out of the House to fully fund the department. The one that we sent after the Senate sent over their weak offer, we sent a bill that was short term. It's not exactly what we want, but at least it allows everybody to get paid, all the agencies, TSA, everybody, while we negotiate our differences. We have very big differences between the House and the Senate. The Senate bill they sent over, by the way, defunds about 7,000 positions at the Department of Homeland Security. And John, keep in mind, we've had 3 Americans killed just last week by people here illegally. We've had 4 terrorist attacks on our home soil here in America just in the last month.
Right.
This is no time to be defunding major operations at the Department of Homeland Security. That's what the Senate bill did.
So there you go. And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is some of the funding that they stripped out was for Homeland Security investigations. And some of their main focus is cybersecurity and human trafficking. They stripped out the funding for the department that investigates human trafficking. I mean, that should tell you pretty much all you need to know. It really should. These so-called funding fights, the things that they're going through right now, it is a very clear indicator of what their priorities are. Their priorities have absolutely nothing to do with stopping human trafficking whatsoever. Cybersecurity is important, yeah, but I mean, come on. If it had only been cybersecurity, okay, I can live with that. I think we all could. But human trafficking, really? They're using it as leverage to shape behavior. Because whoever controls the conditions, whoever controls the enforcement mechanisms, they control the outcome. This bureaucracy doesn't act of its own volition. It responds to stimuli. And even that's too broad. It responds to negative stimuli. It responds to constraints. You remove the pressure to actually enforce laws, what happens? Laws don't get enforced. We saw that in the 4 years of the Biden administration, with millions upon millions of people illegally crossing the border, and they seemingly couldn't care less. Not seemingly. We know they couldn't care less because they said, come on. They told them, just come. When it's really frustrating dealing with these people. It's really frustrating. Because when they control the funding and the conditions under which that funding is applied, you control how and you control whether the system actually works. And right now, the system isn't working. What they're doing, they're trying to do as the minority what they failed to do when they had the majority. How many times have we talked about how when they controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, how they didn't get anything done? They didn't pass any meaningful legislation. They had the majority, and everyone's yammering about the Epstein files. When they had them the entire time, and nobody cared. Now, all of a sudden, because they think somehow maybe the orange man might be implicated, now all of a sudden release the Epstein files. You got people in the chat all the time, across all our shows, release the Epstein files. What about the Epstein files? They had the chance to do all of this when they had the majority, and they didn't do it. And now, as a minority, they're holding everything up. This is a pattern that we've seen time and time and time again. They have this policy language, and it's strong, relatively speaking. And then the laws exist, and there's no enforcement. I mean, just look at what they do with gun laws. If they actually enforced the gun laws that were on the books, which there's entirely too many in my opinion, but if they actually enforced them, we wouldn't have anywhere near the amount of gun violence that we do. And I've talked about, this isn't a discussion about gun violence, but I've talked about my ideas for how to curb the gun violence. And it's nothing elaborate, it's nothing genius, it's just common sense. A term that they love to throw around and have absolutely none of. But anyway, I'm getting off track. These agencies that they're fighting over, these enforcement agencies, they become political pawns instead of neutral enforcement agencies. The enforcement depends on who's in charge. And when the left is in charge, enforcement becomes non-existent, as we saw with the border, as we see in these leftist cities when criminals, it's like a revolving door. Before the paperwork's even done, before the report's written, they're walking out the door only to commit another crime. This, and because of that, the enforcement is inconsistent at best. And it sends signals. It sends a signal to everyone involved. And the uncertainty that engenders creates all kinds of opportunities for exploitation. I want to take a look at this because this was Tim Burchett, and he hit the nail on the head.
Supports President Trump at the Save America Act, which they should. He ignores that. He and you as a member of the media ought to be disgusted at the fact they passed that thing at 2:25 in the morning and left all the other senators kind of hanging. All he had to do is have 5 of his cronies on the floor. He cuts a deal with Schumer. Obviously, the leadership in the Senate, and that's on both sides of the aisle, has a real disgust for this president and House leadership because they didn't even have the guts to call Speaker Mike Johnson and let him know what happened. The whole deal of, you know, the stereotype of Congress is, and it's well deserved, is that we pass stuff in the dark of night because we don't have any guts, and that's clearly what's shown in the Senate leadership. I think they need to get some new leadership over there, in my opinion.
Well, of course, he is absolutely right. John Thune was a terrible choice, and we talked about that a little bit already. The system, all up and down the spectrum, is just broken. Congress is broken. Enforcement is broken. And because of, like I said, mentioned the opportunities of it for exploitation that this creates, because of the way that they can just turn this off and on, it stops being a system and is more of a tool. Like I said, that can be turned on and off, adjusted. And sometimes it's not even the right tool for the job. And we know how that works out. I know all too well how that works out. If you don't have the right tool for the job, it makes everything that much harder. And the tools that we have in Congress right now are making everyone's job and everyone's life that much harder. It's not funny because these people are just, I don't understand why we keep electing them. I really don't. And we keep electing these corruptocrats and don't vote them out when they screw up. And that's why the system is in the shambles that it's in. We haven't put enough pressure on them to do any of the things that we want to do. We haven't put enough pressure on them for term limits. We haven't put enough pressure on them for anything. And they know that once they get in, the likelihood is they're going to be in there for as long as they want to be. They'll be in there until they get into legal trouble. They'll be in there until they get too old. Last year, there was a report of a woman who, I can't remember where I want to say Texas, where people hadn't seen her for weeks. And she was in a memory care facility because she had dementia or something like that. Very rarely will they leave on their own volition. And if they do, it's probably going to be for a better paying job or something like that, a better opportunity. But usually, lately, it's old age. I mean, look at Mitch McConnell, Maxine Waters, crazy Auntie Max, Dianne Feinstein, who died in office, and all the rest of them that are just, they should be enjoying the time with their grandkids or their great grandkids, but instead they're making everybody's life miserable in Congress. All right, I spent a little bit too long on that. So I want to get to the No Kings protests. These people are ridiculous. I have seen so many videos on social media these people dressed up as furries, these people dressed up as frogs. I mean, just making complete buffoons of themselves, complete buffoons. And of course, the American Pravda is busy saying that millions took to the streets. I've seen reports where they say that of the 3 No Kings protests that have taken place, each one has had more and more people. I don't buy that for a second, because every video I've seen, except for the ones in New York and possibly LA, there's hardly been anyone there. Hardly anyone there. And then when they try to show you video footage of these protests, come to find out that it's either a pro-Trump rally from back in the day or some other protest from years ago that had absolutely nothing to do with No Kings. And so they use these numbers as these false numbers as somehow evidence to say that a majority of people now are against Trump. And meanwhile, he's not a. My goodness, these people are so stupid. It's it boggles the mind. It's truly mystifying. And then, not to mention, before we even get into some of the ridiculousness, before we even get into some of that, it wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't that long ago when CNN had this headline: Liberals want Obama to be a king, not a president. What changed? What changed? Why now all of a sudden is it No Kings? Well, we know why. Because the guy who's in charge now, they don't like. That's the extent of it. So they're saying that these protests, there allegedly were thousands of coordinated events nationwide, and then there were some in Europe where there actually is a king, but they called it, I think, No Tyrants or something like that. Despite the sparse attendance of some of them, these were, for the most part, very well organized and very well funded enterprises, funded by activist networks, funded by Soros and others of his ilk. And when you really look at what went down, it's hard to put into words exactly what, or it's hard to fathom what some of these people are actually thinking. Because this was a protest, a No Kings protest in New York City.
Working class revolution! Working class revolution!
They're flying the hammer and sickle flag. And you heard them chant, "Communist revolution is the solution," or whatever it was they were saying. What does that have to do with No Kings? Because what they're doing is advocating for a tyrannical government to take over. And they're too stupid to realize it.
Solution. There is only one solution. Communist revolution. Communist revolution.
no, there's another solution, and that ain't it. And then you have these idiots.
Wake out there. That's good. That's good. I want to start by thanking.
They're flying the flag of the Islamic Republic in this country. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that we're at war with them right now. But they're flying the flag of a regime that, again, is completely intolerant, that kills its own people, that has killed between 30 and 40,000 of its citizens because they had the gall to protest against them. Now, if President Trump were the king that they are claiming, this wouldn't be allowed. There is so much free expression, free speech going on here. If he were the bad guy that they claim, this would not be taking place. Scott Jennings, he summed it up very nicely on the CNN, as he always does.
These No Kings rallies actually look pretty representative to me of the Democratic coalition. I saw people flying the hammer and sickle in New York City. I saw Hezbollah flags. I saw Hamas flags. I saw Palestinian flags. I saw trans signs. I see weirdo liberal boomers out there. This is pretty representative of the Democratic coalition, and that's who funds it as well, by the way. And so I think if America looks at this and says, what do the two parties stand for? They got it at the No Kings rally.
No, I think if you Americans were out there, Republicans.
You like hammer and sickle? You like hammer and sickle flags?
That's not what that No King stood for.
They had a bunch of them.
That, and that is,
they come from somewhere.
All right, well, No Kings rally? I did. I went to 6, and I'll tell you, there's so much excitement.
6?
There's so much energy. Yeah,
that's a lot of free speech.
I'll get you a T-shirt. You should come.
That's a lot of free speech for a country with a king.
That's a lot of free speech. And, you know,
and Scott Jennings just said it. I don't know if you caught it. That's a lot of free speech for a country with a king. There you go. And let's not give them that much credit, because these people, these people are not bright. And most of them are probably getting paid. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Before we even get to the stupidity, I have to show you this, because this should infuriate everybody. But of course it won't. But let's just listen to this madness.
I came to this country as a refugee. To me, America was a beacon of hope, a place where freedom wasn't just a word, but it was a promise. I arrived here when I was 12 years old. I could have never imagined the day would come when we were staring down at this kind of creeping authoritarianism in the United States of America.
Authoritarianism? Maybe you should learn how to speak English. But anyway. Ilhan Omar has the nerve to talk about, to basically just disparage the country that took her in, gave her citizenship, and now is a member of Congress. And she has the nerve to sit up there and say, we're a thought. Put it this way, if I were in charge, she wouldn't be in that position. I have said numerous times, and I said on this show, if you weren't born here, you should not hold any elected office. And I get proven out with that because she has said on numerous occasions that she is not in Congress to advance American interests. She has said on numerous occasions that she is in office to advance the cause of Somalia. That statement right there should have gotten her booted, but it didn't. This was another no kings rally, but I wanted to get it. I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to show you this because this, like Scott Jennings said, is indicative of the Democrat coalition. Well, here you go. Because if this really is indicative of the Democrat coalition and Republicans allow them to take power, we're in deep, deep trouble.
I was just wondering, like, what you guys do.
Sure. So we're just against U.S. intervention. So we're against the U.S. being involved in war in Iran. We're against the U.S. Funding the war against Gaza. We're against the U.S. being involved in Venezuela and Cuba. And so that's the focus of our organization.
I see. What's
flying another Palestinian flag.
going on with the war right now? Like, why is it happening?
The war in Iran?
Yeah.
Nothing. She's got nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
You have better internet. Don't you think you should know what you're protesting before you get there and set up the table? You would think you would have that already in your mind and wouldn't need the internet. But no.
All day, and
yeah.
I'm brain fried.
It's a lot. It's hot.
Brain fried. Yeah, well, you didn't lie there, sister. My goodness. That is indicative of the Democrat coalition, for sure. And here's another one. This one is from, I just discovered this last night as I was doing some final prep for the show. This is a 5.5 minute clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but just the first 45 seconds or so is absolute gold. Check this out.
What do you make of the fact that he was democratically elected, even won the popular vote? How does that make him a king?
It doesn't make him a king. It makes him a president, not a king.
Well, this is called no kings. So what does that mean to you?
It means we got to get rid of him. He's not a king.
Yep, we've established that already. He's not a king.
Democratic process, and we've gone that route with him. Now he's acted like a king.
Can you give me a specific example?
Here we go.
Specific example? Well, there's a million of them all put together. There's no one example.
Then you should be able to come up with at least one.
It's
just one or two?
It's more than one or two.
No, can you give me one or two examples?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, I can, I guess. I'm just at a loss of thought here on
Of course.
There's a lot of things.
Okay.
I can't really.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
I know what Biden did. I don't agree with all of it, but this is way worse than what any other president
What makes
has
it
done
worse?
in this country. You can't see that. I don't have anything more to say. If you
And that's typical. I get that all the time. Well, if you don't know, I'm not going to waste my time telling you, or something along those lines. And it's because they have nothing, absolutely nothing.
don't know.
What makes President Trump a king?
Himself?
What specific policies or actions?
Oh, everything that he does. The man's a fascist.
Can you give
Define fascism. I say that, I must say that at least 2 or 3 times a day on social media. Define fascism, and nobody ever does.
me an example?
Oh boy, of everything that he does. I mean, he just tries to put his name on everything.
What specific action or policy is the Trump administration acting like a king?
He wants to be a dictator. He loves dictators. He wants to be a dictator. And
Didn't he just remove a dictator from Venezuela?
he went in and stole them.
So he was not a dictator in Venezuela?
He was.
So he removed a dictator.
Just disappeared. Or people.
Oh, and it goes on. It goes on and on. And somebody said, I think it might have been somebody on one of the shows on the network last night, said that this is not indicative of all the protesters, and that not all of them are this uninformed. Well, then please, somebody show me. Somebody go out to one of these and actually get some footage where they actually can articulate why they're there. You never see it because it doesn't exist. These, it's really sad. It is really sad. And they think they're doing something. They really think they're doing something. The one person that, and I'm not even going to say was ever able to articulate it intelligently because he wasn't, but the most well-known person I can think of who was all in favor of this no king stuff was Joe Walsh. And he has gotten repeatedly smashed in debates. And so, and I haven't even really, I usually see his stuff pop up on my feed. I haven't seen it in a while. Once I realized this, I started to look for it. And he hasn't mentioned anything about no kings. He's just as Trump deranged as he's ever been, but he's not really, he's not really talking about this no king stuff. I wonder why. I don't really wonder why. It's kind of obvious, but there you go. They want us to think that this is some unified movement. It's obviously not. It's well funded. There are people who are putting a lot of money into this. When you see all the same hammer and sickle flags, when you see people with all the same signs, they haven't figured out how, they haven't figured out any messaging beyond just no kings. Those 2 words, no kings. He's a dictator. But they have nothing beyond that because they're not told anything beyond that. And they had over in Europe, they had some no kings rallies. In some places they called it no tyrants, but they actually have a king over there. And some of the countries where some of these protests are taking place, they actually have monarchies. And the irony of that is just off the charts. And it just shows you that these people are not bright. Not bright at all. All right, y'all. Let me move on, and I want to get to a word from our sponsor before we move on. And our sponsor for today's show is the SHR Media Shop. Now, if you want to support this network and rep your favorite shows, head over to SHR Media Shop, where you'll find all of our show shirts, the official SHR mug, which is right here, and a limited edition 250 reasons to read source documents. That's the mug. And this is the 250 reasons to read source documents t-shirt. And this shirt is celebrating our 250th anniversary, the 250th birthday of the United States, because defending liberty starts with understanding the documents that created it. So celebrate 250 years of liberty and remember why it matters. So get yours at the SHR shop. And you can also find, like I said, all of the show shirts. We have Sackhead Sean's Edge of Liberty, Beer and Bullstein. We got the SHR logo hoodie, although it's no longer hoodie weather. You got the Mission Ready Men Briefing t-shirt, the Conservative Sherpa t-shirt for BZ, the Reaver of Common Sense shirt. Check all of them out, and the SHR logo t-shirt as well. So be sure to head over to the SHR Media Shop. Just go to shrmedia.com. It's going to be the top banner right there, and that'll bring you right over to the shop, and you can check out all of the great designs that we have there. All right, y'all, I am Big E, and you are watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men Briefing right here on the SHR Media Network. And you can catch all of the great shows in our lineup, starting with Sackhead Sean on the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Jersey Joe, which I guess he's actually first on Mondays and Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. BZ and the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. He will be on tonight, so please be sure and check that out. And the new guy, Beer and Bullstein with Lyle Armstrong every Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and share all of these great shows, and pray that we have another major breakthrough. We hit 1,300 subscribers very quickly. And so we want to continue that push. So please help us do that by liking, subscribing, sharing, joining, commenting. We have some people in the chat. I really appreciate you all being here. And I appreciate the moderators for stepping in and holding it down in the chat. Thank you all very much, because we do appreciate all of the participants in this show, and we enjoy a good debate. So please be sure to keep it respectful in the chat and get a good discussion going. We love to see it. All right, y'all. Let's go ahead and get back to the briefing. And I want to talk about this because this is something that happened a few days ago, and the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, they recently elected, well, not recently, it was last year, they elected a woman by the name of Kirsty Coventry, to the presidency of the IOC. And because I think it was because of her election that the IOC has finally done this. But we were told to trust the science, unless it was inconvenient. We were told that there was no biological advantage to males who were presenting as females to compete against females. we were told that anyone who questions this is a bigot or a homophobe or transphobe or whatever the case may be. Debate was completely shut down. There was no room for it whatsoever, and no questions were answered. And the policies that they had before Kirsty Coventry's election were built on a narrative rather than reality, which is something that we talk about quite a lot on this show. And the system in place didn't follow truth. It enforced narrative, it enforced consensus. But Kirsty Coventry was elected, and from what I can tell, I haven't done a huge deep dive into her Olympic career or her background, but from what I can tell, from what I've seen so far, she has always been someone who understood that men have a distinct advantage when it comes to competing against women. And so she's been emphasizing fairness, safety, and integrity in women's sports. And now under her leadership, biological differences are now acknowledged. And it's refreshing to see. She didn't come out and say they were wrong. She didn't come out and blast the previous administrations for their stances on this. And I understand why. I kind of wish she would, but I understand why she didn't. She wants another term, and I get that. But this is what happens. They have this, they push things too far, and then when they get the backlash, there's this quiet walk back. They went from this inclusion at all costs mentality at the expense of fairness, at the expense of what's right. But then the pressure built up, and so they elected a new president and the policy shifted. Now, maybe they elected her, maybe they saw what was happening, knew her stance, and elected her to kind of save face, because they didn't want the current administration to walk it back and look like idiots. So they elected her. And this is just my opinion. I have no insight into this or anything like that, but this is just how it looks to me. They elected her knowing her stance, knowing she would reverse some of these policies, and the people who had been in charge before could save face. That's my take on it. I could be wrong. So it wasn't an apology. It was just an acknowledgement of reality and a retreat from previously ridiculous stances. Now, this is kind of a pattern. It's kind of a pattern because you see, and it's not just with sports, but just with things in general. There's a narrative that they want to push. And if the narrative doesn't comport with reality, they push it and they push it, it gets enforced. And then dissent, people who push back on it, they get punished. They get marginalized. They get called all kinds of ists and phobes. And then reality sets in. Records break. Records become impossible to break in the future. People get injured. Peyton McNabb. And then as a result of that, there's a backlash. And then quietly, and sometimes in the dark of night without even really an announcement, they kind of walk back and adjust these policies. And then as time goes on and people realize what happened, then they try to pretend that that's always been the policy. People paying attention know that that's a crock. This is lying in reverse, I guess. They don't come out and admit their failings. They just quietly pivot and hope you don't notice. And then when you do notice, they tell you it's always been this way. When we all know the truth. The science, the science never changed. The science was, I mean, the science is something that kids know. I mean, you see that scene in Kindergarten Cop where the kid talks about the differences between boys and girls. I mean, come on. This is simple stuff. But because it advanced the narrative, well, then they had to push it as far as they could go. So like I said, the science didn't change, but the pressure did. And then the public pushback forced them to recalibrate. And the Overton window, which was shifted way to the left with this madness, is starting to shift back the other way. But we still, at least I, don't trust that this is not going to come back and swing the other way again. The LGBTQ alphabet mafia, they have a very strong lobby. They have a lot of funding that they can bring to bear. And so we'll see. This isn't just about sports, though. This is a good thing when it comes to sports. This is when it comes to women's sports. But you can't really trust it because the system only corrects when it's forced to, when there's enough public pushback. And it will never admit that it was wrong or that it failed. But it's not just about sports. It's about society as a whole, really, and what we're allowing to come forth. And one of the things that we're allowing is Islam to take a giant foothold in our society. And I want to play this for you because when I saw this, I was pretty much blown away. And I'm not going to play the whole thing. I mean, this is part of a very long, drawn out thing. But this was in New York, and this is Mamdani speaking at a church. So check this out, and then we'll talk about it.
Well, a couple of months ago, friends and family, we invited then candidate Zoran Kwame Mamdani to come to the Greater Allen Cathedral. And I'm so glad that today, his first public visit on a Sunday morning as the mayor of the city of New York is right here at the Greater Allen AME Cathedral of New York. Help me welcome my brother and friend, Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Welcome.
Now, before he talks, this is a huge problem. Now, from what I found out about this particular church, this guy preaches a Black liberation theology, which is in no way, in absolutely no way, biblically based. And because it's not biblically based, he has no problem bringing up an avowed Muslim who hates Christians to speak in his pulpit. Now, I know a lot of preachers. My dad's a preacher, and I can guarantee they could put a gun to his head and he would never allow a Muslim in his pulpit. I don't know any preachers who would. And so right off the bat, this is a problem, but let's continue.
Good morning, GAC. What a privilege it is to spend Palm Sunday with you.
And on Palm Sunday, wow.
I want to thank Reverend Green. I want to thank Lady Brea for inviting me to join all of you on this blessed day. And I want to acknowledge all of our elected officials, our leaders in this community who are here with us. Now, it is an honor to be back with this congregation because, as Reverend Green said, the last time I attended service here, back in the early days of August, much was different. The sun was, but what remains the same as that day on this one is the feeling of welcome that I feel when walking through these doors. It is, and so I say thank you for allowing me to join you for what is such a special part of this week. When I stood before you in August, their fellow New Yorkers, trust. That trust exists because so many in this congregation and in countless others across this city grew weary of change never arriving and decided to deliver it themselves. And it is a trust placed in me that is no different, frankly, than the trust that New Yorkers place in themselves every day. A trust to pursue their dreams, to create community where none existed before, to build homes and deliver futures for their children greater than they imagined for themselves. Deliverance does not always have to arrive atop a donkey, riding past the Mount of Olives.
And there we go. I thought I had it queued up to that part. But he just let a Muslim in his pulpit basically preach the exact opposite of what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that Jesus is the only way to deliverance. And this, like I said, this guy, he preaches this Black liberation theology nonsense. I don't have a problem at all with preachers who get political in the pulpit. I think more should. But if it's not going to be biblically based, then it's just a weekly gathering of people giving speeches. And that's why he allowed Mamdani to get up there and completely desecrate his pulpit. Well, he's already done that with the stuff that he preaches, but the people in this church are being led straight to hell. Straight to hell. The church is supposed to be a beacon of truth, supposed to anchor truth, not adapt to the culture. And the culture right now is somehow leaning toward this acceptance of Islam, despite the fact that they completely want to kill us. It's suicidal empathy, something else I talk about a lot. When the church decides that it's going to adapt to culture, it stops being a church, and it starts being a social gathering. And then everything downstream from that gets corrupted as well. And so when we have stuff like this happening in this country, something else that I talk about more often than I really want to is Canada. Canada is moving towards restricting even more certain speech. They have a law that they have just put in place or are about to put in place. And it's because Canada is so leftist. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that it's going to happen. But Canada has a plan to criminalize quoting the Bible as hate speech. Bill C-9, dubbed the Combating Hate Act, basically says that if you are quoting the Bible in public, you could be subject to fines or jail or both. That, I mean, is Canada okay? I mean, really? Quoting the Bible is hate speech now. And I guess that really shouldn't be a surprise, considering the Prime Minister of Canada said this.
These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
Muslim values are Canadian values. So when you look at this quoting the Bible thing from that perspective, what do you expect? What do you expect? Muslims hate the Bible. If their Canadian Muslim values can make it so that quoting the Bible in response to the Quran is hate speech, Canada's toast. Canada is absolute toast. And I relate this to what happened with Mamdani, because we all know what he's trying to do in New York. when the authorities can define what's acceptable, when the authorities can define what is acceptable to say and think, your Christian faith becomes something that must conform to that. And I'm not conforming to that, and neither should you. When stuff like this happens, like I've mentioned before, there is truth, and people who say that your truth or my truth, there is no your truth or my truth. There is only the truth. And if the government decides that truth is not fixed, that it's fluid, as we see with the whole gender nonsense, then it's got to be filtered. And who is going to do the filtering? And what are they going to use to filter it? Who's going to approve it once it has been filtered? What context is going to be used to apply it? Christianity is only tolerated by these people when it's softened, when it's not, when people are not bold in their proclamations of their faith, when they keep it private, or they reshape it to fit the culture, which is not Christianity at all, as we talked about earlier. This is not random. Excuse me. This is something that we see happening across all different disciplines. When you need approval to speak the truth, the target becomes Christianity, because Christianity has historically been and should be the standard of truth. And if it's not, or if that's what people actually believe, then in order for that to change, it has to become a target. They have to eliminate it. They have to soften it. They have to make it vulnerable. They have to marginalize it. As soon as truth needs permission to be spoken, it's not truth anymore. It's controlled speech. It's compelled speech. If you speak it. And it's not just here, it's not just in Canada where Christianity is a target. Something that happened over the weekend, again, on Palm Sunday. And don't get me started on making connections. But on Palm Sunday in Nigeria, Christians were slaughtered in church. The killings were tied directly to their Christian faith. It wasn't random. It actually, like I said, it happened on Palm Sunday, and it's not the first time that Christians in Nigeria have been slaughtered in church on Palm Sunday. And there is a very good chance it will happen again on Easter, which has also happened before. Now, I haven't seen a group take responsibility for this yet, but there is in all likelihood, it is Boko Haram or some Boko Haram affiliated subgroup. Christians are under attack to varying degrees all over the world. Obviously, not so much in this country in terms of, well, I don't even want to say that. Christians have been targeted for violence in this country. Obviously, what's happening in Nigeria is an extreme case, or what's happening in all of the Muslim world is an extreme case. And when these Western countries import people, Muslims from these countries, that violence against Christians is going to increase. It's a pattern. And people who boldly proclaim their faith are going to make themselves targets. Islam absolutely hates, as I stated when I showed you the video of Mamdani in church, in a church. Islam hates Christians. Islam hates Christianity. And when they're in charge, they restrict it by default. They restrict it violently by default. You have to convert, pay a tax, or die. Those are your options when it comes to dealing with Muslims who are in charge. That's it. Convert, pay, or die. And then Carney, up there in Canada, actually says out loud in public that Islam values are Canadian values. Where do you think that is going to lead? Where? It's going to lead right back to what happened in Nigeria. It's going to lead right back to what happens all over the Muslim world. And he's a huge lefty, and it's all part of this red-green alliance, convergence of ideologies lined up against Christians, lined up against conservatives. That is the one thing that they have in common. The left hates Christians, Muslims hate Christians. And then if Muslims are allowed to take over, they will kill the lefties just like they kill everyone else. But for now, it suits their purposes. And just like Islam has absolutely no problem using violence to advance its agenda, neither does the left. Neither does the left. A woman by the name of Christine Jones was killed. And the motive, or at least part of what went to the motive of her killing, was that she supported Trump. The woman who killed her believe that Christine Jones got her fired from her job at a hotel in Madison, Wisconsin, and accused her of being racist because she supported Trump. After she got fired last year, slashed the tires on her vehicle. Now, authorities are not really sure why she shot her now, but she was arrested for killing Miss Jones. And I bring it up in this context because, like I said, with Muslims and the Red Green Alliance, political identity completely overrides basic human dignity. I've talked before quite a bit about how pretty much all political violence these days comes from the left. Now, I'm not going to run down all of that right now. I've done it before. You can go back to some of my previous shows where I talk about that in some detail. But the left needs to, just like the Muslims, need to dehumanize people in order to accomplish what they want. And once they dehumanize you, well, then taking your life is nothing, because you're not human to them. You're less than human. We hear the left talk about it all the time. Conservatives need to go to re-education camps. Conservatives should be fired from their jobs. Conservatives should have all their, should be debanked. That's what they think. They've said it numerous times. So when they think this about you, then that justifies any violent action that they want to take against you. That justifies any attempt to limit speech. It justifies anything they want to do, because as far as they're concerned, you are not worth it. You are not human. You are less than, to use one of their phrases. You are other. And once that takes place, then it's very easy to rationalize any action they want to take against you. So they hate your faith. They target you because of your faith. They try to reshape the truth. They try to basically rewrite the truth as they see it, because as far as they're concerned, there is no objective truth. And when there is no objective truth, anyone who challenges that is targeted. And so that means that Christians who have the Bible, have that objective truth as their North Star, they're going to be targeted. And the system that won't defend the truth, it won't defend the people who believe in it. Once they don't believe that you have any any value, violence against you is not far behind. Not far behind at all. All right, I got 5 minutes left. Do I have time to talk about this? I don't think I do. I don't. I'll have to leave that for next time because it's a lot, and 5 minutes just isn't enough time to really get into it. So I'll just leave it at that. We didn't, excuse me, we didn't just talk about, it's not just one story that this stuff revolves around. It's a pattern. It's a pattern that cuts across all kinds of systems, all kinds of institutions. It cuts across internationally. It's the same pressure, just takes different forms depending on the forum. And what they all have in common is that they just will not tolerate Christianity. They will not tolerate faith. And once it does that, it stops protecting the people who live by that faith. And once that happens, the line that people used to not cross, that kept things from going too far, is gone. And then there's no such thing as too far. As we saw with Christine Jones, as we see with Christians in Nigeria, and so on. All right, y'all, that is going to be it for this briefing. We are not here to just run our mouths for an hour or 90 minutes. We are here to equip Christian men and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. So if anything that we said here today matters to you, please don't just watch, but share it, share this show, share this channel, bring other people, bring another man into the fight because we need them. And if you want to wear what you stand for, head over to missionreadymen.com, hit Shop 7 Armors, and check out all of the great designs we have over there about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And while you're there, check out the SHR shop as well. And check out all the great shirts for all the shows that we have here on the network. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.